Hey, welcome to my channel. I don't know. I'm just going to talk about a little bit about the Knicks. If you're coming for the first time or have seen my videos, one of the things was is during this new year, I made a New Year's resolution, or a resolution basically to at least strive, well, not strive, stream live once a week. So it's the new week basically. I am going to be streaming at this case, and one of the things I'm going to be streaming about, or today I'm going to stream about talking about the New York Knicks, as to what can they do basically. I mean, like now you got the finals with the Heat versus the Denver Nuggets. Everyone thought maybe the fact that the Knicks were going to go against the Miami Heat on paper they should have beaten the Heat. But in reality, it looks like, well, in reality, it shows that they had a lot of deficiencies, which it showed. One was the fact was they couldn't close off the inside lane as much. Their defense wasn't as great, and the biggest factor was is they had no outside shooting. Like Brunson was the only one that was keeping it in the game. Randall, he was temperamental, where to the point of, like if he offensively sucked, the defense also soured at that point as well too. Quite honestly, um, Robinson good defensively, needed a little bit of help on the boards. He couldn't do it all on his own. And one of the other factor was Obadiah was one of those things that he couldn't guard as well. Unfortunately, that sucked. Same aspect was is like again they had no outside shooting outside of Brunson. I mean, one of the peoples that were there that was supposed to be there specifically for that was Fournier, but he wasn't played. You know, he fell out of favor with Tibbs basically. Barrett, I mean, he did well enough in the beginning of the playoffs, but during these playoffs, it's one of those things where his outside shooting sucked. It sucked during the during the regular season. At least he was able to drive and get some points, but the problem was how these type of points were they garbage points or whatnot? Because one of the things was it's like once the lane is closed, the guy can't drive in basically or go in. So the real question is like, what should the Knicks do basically? I mean, honestly, I don't know what to say because quite honestly, it's a situation where you've got so many players in place and like um, you don't know what to do with them. I mean, you've got Jeffries. I mean, I think he signed for a bit, so like you got to hold on to him. The question is like you got Rose, Derrick Rose. What do you do with him? Honestly, the Knicks had the opportunity to trade him. I think he wants to stay with the Knicks because of Tibbs and also for that community feel, but also for that veteran leadership. But he is being paid extra for that. Fournier, you're gonna have to trade him because like there's no way you can keep him. I mean, the fact is he was non-existent this season. You're gonna have to trade him. The question is who's going to take him. One of the things is, I mean, yeah, he's on his last year of his contract, so any team that's willing to pick him up probably is willing to like take him just to like just so they open up their for the following year their books for the following year. Question is who would really be willing to take him with this paycheck for that 1 year basically, and what would the Knicks get in return? If they could get a second round draft pick, great. I mean, there are some places he could go to. He could go back to Orlando. Orlando could work off of him basically, and like then let him go at that point, let him sign with whomever. Other other possibilities are maybe the Clippers. I don't know if that's the case. I highly doubt that's happening. Maybe the Pacers, which kind of works. But for the Pacers, I think they want someone in return beside Fournier. I think they want Toppin. They've been looking for Toppin. It might make sense for them, but I don't think they want Fournier, Toppin, and a draft pick for in return for what they would give out. Sims, he's a good enough center, but is he a great center? I don't know because one of the things is Mitch Robinson as well as Hartenstein did pretty decent in the playoffs, so he could be that backup that you need basically. Grimes and Quickly are a big factor though that you don't know what to do with them basically. Quickly was that six man. Grimes as that shooting guard. It's one of those things where I'm not sure what to do with him at that point as well too. I mean, he was supposed to be that shooting guard, but so is Barrett. Barrett is supposed to be that shooting guard as well too, and Barrett is not the future. It seems like. I mean, granted, I've said in my prior videos, if you see my other prior videos, that he's one that I think the Knicks should build around outside of Brunson. That Toppin and Barrett are the other two that you should build on because I think there's got to be some patience, but seeing as how he played during the playoffs, he had those glimpses. But the thing is like if he doesn't progress, what do? You're not going to get anything for him, basically. I mean, with when the Knicks had Knox and Frank Nicotina, they could have traded him for much higher value points at that point, but they did it. They didn't get anything in return as a result, and that's what sucked. At that time, they could have gotten much more for them for what they got in return recently. Um, yeah, I mean, honestly, Josh Hart, do you keep him? Do you trade him? I mean, him and I mean, on a defensive perspective, Hart was really well. From an offensive aspect, he was the spark for them during the regular season, but during the playoffs, didn't really help much either. So the real question is, what do you do with him? Um, do you sign him or not? I honestly think the Knicks shouldn't sign him. Let him go. If it's a case where the Knicks, I think one thing first and foremost with Randall, that's the biggest factor is with Randall himself. What do you do with him basically? Randall, we've seen it. He brings you. I mean, during the regular season, he's good. He brings you into the playoffs, but once he hits the playoffs, it's like he becomes non-existent to the point where like it's not to about non-existent, but it's more of an aspect of if he doesn't do well offensively, he starts moping and has not tantrums, or just mopes around a little bit to the point it also affects his defensive skills as well too. He's not like let's say Anthony Davis, where if he doesn't do well offensively, at least he'll keep him defensively, but he has to be dependent on everyone else at that point too. So that's one of the things where I think when it comes to that perspective, I don't think you've got Julius Randle, as a case to keep for the for defense purposes. If and in that situation, he doesn't even go back. You've seen in some of the games, a lot of the playoff games, when he was like not doing well, he was like his feet were like pretty much lead foot. He had a lead foot and pretty much was not getting to the back to the other side, and that's why Miami had a lot of fast point breaks at that point. I think if you trade Randall. Quite honestly, maybe, maybe, uh, uh, put Randall and package him up with Quentin Grimes. I know Quentin Grimes is good defensively, but we need that shooter. We need a shooter. If anything else, switch off Randall. Maybe keep Toppin. Toppin, I think, as I mentioned, basically, he's one of those guys that has that potential. He has that raw talent. You've seen it during the playoffs as well as during the regular season. Once he plays, you could see that talent show. You could see that raw talent show. I think it's something that he's got to develop into, and I think that's something where you need more and more playing time at that point. Barrett has had playing time. The thing is, he hasn't done really well. Question is, what do you do with him? Do you trade him or do you keep him? Do you hope that maybe he becomes that number 3 draft pick potential, that he goes out there and basically becomes that complementary star to Brunson, or becomes that tier 2 star? Because right now, there's no tier 1 all star on the Knicks. Let's get that straight. Randall is not a tier 1 star. Brunson is not a tier 1 star just yet. Brunson is proving that he's on the cusp of becoming that tier 1 superstar, basically. Randall, he was supposed to be at the tier 1, but he went down to his tier 2 based on the playoffs. And I think that's what happens. You've got to put him onto the place and like trade him at that point. Quickly, like I said, as a 6 man, honestly, if the Knicks can trade, if you're gonna trade Toppin, you better get someone really good in return. Because like I think you're gonna lose out, and you're gonna see what's gonna happen when he gets traded, and he starts playing every day. If anything, I would love for Randall to go to basically to Indiana, to the Pacers themselves, or to maybe, if possible. I mean, I would be down for this because I think this individual basically, after everything that was said about him being the worst superstar, I think you get my drift of where I'm going with it. Basically, if you could trade basically Barrett and maybe Randall for Kawhi Leonard, you might get more with Kawhi Leonard coming to New York. I think he might work on himself a little bit and do have that regime to basically or regiment, sorry, to basically um, play 82 games, at least 80 out of the at least 80 games without getting injured, and to being able to essentially play in the playoffs without sitting on the playoffs, basically. Because once he's in the playoffs and he plays well, you see that he is a dominant factor. The problem is with him when he's not in the playoffs or not in the games, the team suffers. I think him and Brunson together will work really well if they could get Leonard, and if the Clippers are like tired of Leonard. I think this is a case where you could trade, if anything, trade Randall for it would be great if you could trade Randall for one swap, but I think more of a case so you're gonna have to trade Randall and RJ Barrett and maybe one of those conditional draft picks to get a Kawhi Leonard at that point. Sorry for Paul George, but it's gonna suck for him. I mean, hell, honestly, if the Knicks can actually trade Randall for actually yeah Randall Barrett, uh, maybe well Randall Barrett and Toppin for basically Kawhi and maybe the one of the conditional draft for Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. I think that elevates the team up to like that superstar level. It brings them in the same tier as the Bucks, the 76ers. Well, depending on the 76ers, if Harden's going to stick around or not. The Celtics. That's assuming the two are together. Brown and Tatum are still together with Smart, or they upgrade with another point guard, proper point guard like Damian Lillard or something like that. And also the aspect of the Miami Heat as well too. Um, and now I will say this, as a Knicks fan, that's being optimistic and hopeful. In reality, that's never going to happen. I know that. But quite honestly, I think it's more of a case of you. It's realistic. Randall has to be traded, unfortunately. He's not a guy that will actually be around to last with the Knicks. I mean, he's young enough, but at the same time, you're at his prime. You're going to have to get rid of him at that point. Quite honestly, I hate to say it, but that's probably what's going to have to happen at that point. Um, with quickly, you want to keep him because of that defensive aspect. Like when Brunson's sitting, you bring quickly on for the defensive perspective as well too, and to playing the flex three or whatever it may be at that point. McBride, I hate to say it, but he's not your true, so you're gonna have to get rid of him at that point as well too. Outside of that, I mean, Hart, I don't think they need to resign. It'd be good if they could resign him, but on the cheap. But I doubt that's going to happen. And Fournier, you're going to have to trade him. There's no way you're going to keep him. You're going to have to trade him and maybe hopefully get some draft pick or something like that. Rose, it'd be great if he were to leave and become a draft pick, but I think he's just going to stick on board. I'm hoping that Derrick Rose works out this season, off season. That brings his skills up. That he could be the Derrick Rose of old for that 1 year. We just need him for that 1 year to be the Derrick Rose of old. Because if you get him at that 1 year from that Derrick Rose of old, him and Brunson together can produce a lot for the Knicks at that point too. But in reality, we know that's not going to happen. Um, Now, I do ask is if you taking a little break here, if you do enjoy my videos, enjoy my content, enjoy my channel, please subscribe. If you haven't subscribed, I'm sorry, I was looking at the other camera at that time. Please subscribe if you haven't subscribed. If you don't enjoy my channels or my videos, but still watch them, then you're welcome to subscribe to that as well too, just for the hell of it. Also, the same aspect as well too is if you like this video or dislike this video, please hit the like or dislike button. I will actually know if I should focus on more of that type of content, of sports related stuff, as far as talking my opinions about like essentially trades and what they should do and what teams should do and what not to do, being sort of like a backdoor or backseat GM basically, or Monday morning GM in that aspect. Um, but with that, I'll leave it at that point. And also, by the way, unfortunately, with chats, even though it's live, I don't see any of the chats or any of the live chats at this point right now. I mean, if there is one, I'd be surprised. But once the video becomes uploaded in a ways, becomes permanent, you can still put in comments, and I do read my comments, and I do respond to them when they warrant a response at that point as well too. From that, I'll leave it at that. But anyways, like I said, I mean, one of the things I think we have to trade. You have no choice but to trade Randall. The other question is, do you trade a Barrett? The question, if you trade Barrett, what do you get in return? Because the thing is, again, Brunson needs that outside shooting. Basically, if you don't have the outside shooting, you don't do well. And the problem is like Hart's not going to be that shooter as well too. McBride has glimpses here, but he's not going to be that person as well too, honestly. So the thing is like, if Barrett can grow into it, yeah, but I doubt he is. The only way I could see that happening is if we see something in the preseason and he works on his game considerably and he uses the playoff as a huge confidence builder, maybe he becomes that. Maybe he becomes that number 3 draft pick, worthy draft pick, basically. Maybe he becomes that tier 2, close to tier 1 all-star, and maybe potentially superstar. Maybe. Even though he's no Zion, but still is. The other question is like with Robinson. I mean, you want to keep him. The man's good, but you might have to use him if you want to bring a superstar back to the New York Knicks. It's going to be him and Barrett with some of the potential draft picks at that point as well too. So that's what's probably going to happen. But with that, I'll leave it at that. Again, leave your comments in the comment section. Let me know what your thoughts are. I'd love to like interact with people about this and discuss more about this. Hell, my whole purpose of this channel as well is to create sort of this platform to discuss with other people, creating a live and going live together so that we can discuss at that point and letting others watch us and like others sort of interacting with us at that point as well too. But with that, I'll leave it that unfiltered, unedited, and unrehearsed. Until